People-pleasing isn't what most of us think it is. When we see someone constantly saying yes to every request, bending over backwards to make others happy, or apologizing for things that aren't even their fault, we might think they're just naturally kind or exceptionally generous. But the truth runs much deeper than surface-level niceness. People-pleasing is actually a survival mechanism, a learned response that develops early in life when a child discovers that their safety, love, and acceptance depend on keeping others happy. It's not about being nice at all. It's about staying safe in a world that once felt unpredictable or threatening. The origins of people-pleasing behavior can be traced back to our earliest relationships, particularly with our primary caregivers. When a child grows up in an environment where love feels conditional, where approval must be earned through good behavior, or where conflict feels dangerous, they learn to read the emotional temperature of every room they enter. They become experts at anticipating what others need, want, or expect, not because they're naturally empathetic, but because their nervous system has been trained to scan for threats to their sense of belonging and security. Think about a young child who notices that mommy smiles more when they're quiet, or that daddy gets angry when they express certain emotions. That child doesn't consciously decide to become a people pleaser. Their developing brain simply creates a map of how to navigate relationships safely. They learn that their authentic self might not be acceptable, so they develop a false self that's designed to keep the peace and maintain connection. This adaptation is actually quite brilliant from a survival perspective, but it comes at a tremendous cost to their authentic development. The nervous system of a people pleaser is often stuck in a chronic state of hypervigilance. They're constantly scanning their environment for signs of disapproval, rejection, or conflict. Their body has learned to interpret someone else's bad mood as a potential threat to their safety, even when logically they know that another person's emotions aren't their responsibility. This is why people pleasers often feel exhausted even when they haven't done anything particularly demanding. Their nervous system is working overtime to keep them safe from perceived social threats. What makes this pattern particularly challenging is that people-pleasing often gets rewarded in our society. We praise children who are compliant and easygoing. We appreciate adults who never cause problems or make waves. We might even call them selfless or considerate. But underneath this socially acceptable exterior, the people pleaser is often struggling with deep feelings of resentment, emptiness, and confusion about their own identity. They've become so skilled at being what others need that they've lost touch with who they actually are.
The relationship between people-pleasing and trauma is profound. When we understand that trauma isn't just about big, obvious events, but can also result from subtle patterns of emotional neglect, conditional love, or family dysfunction, we begin to see how people-pleasing emerges as a protective strategy. A child who grows up walking on eggshells around a parent's unpredictable moods, or who learns that their needs are less important than keeping the family system stable, develops the neural pathways that support people-pleasing behaviors. This survival mechanism becomes so deeply embedded that it continues operating long after the original threat has passed. An adult who learned to people-please as a child might find themselves automatically saying yes to requests they don't want to fulfill, or feeling guilty when they consider prioritizing their own needs. Their body still responds to potential disapproval as if it were a life or death situation, even though their rational mind knows they're safe. The cost of chronic people-pleasing extends far beyond occasional inconvenience. When someone consistently prioritizes others' needs over their own, they often develop what we might call a disconnection from their authentic self. They become skilled at reading others but struggle to identify their own emotions, preferences, or boundaries. This disconnection can lead to depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, and a deep sense of emptiness that no amount of external validation can fill. People pleasers often report feeling like they're living someone else's life. They might have successful careers, stable relationships, and social recognition, but underneath it all, they feel like they're performing a role rather than living authentically. This performance requires enormous energy to maintain, and over time, it can lead to burnout, resentment, and a crisis of identity that forces them to question everything they thought they knew about themselves. The body keeps the score of this chronic self-abandonment. People pleasers frequently struggle with stress-related health issues, digestive problems, chronic pain, and autoimmune conditions. Their nervous system, locked in a pattern of hypervigilance and self-suppression, creates the perfect conditions for illness to develop. The body is literally keeping track of every time they said yes when they meant no, every time they smiled when they felt angry, every time they prioritized someone else's comfort over their own well-being.
Understanding the root cause of people-pleasing behavior is the first step toward healing, but it's not enough to simply recognize the pattern. The neural pathways that support people-pleasing have been reinforced over years or even decades, and changing them requires patience, compassion, and often professional support. It's like trying to create a new path through a forest where there's already a well-worn trail. It takes time and consistent effort to establish the new route. Recovery from people-pleasing isn't about becoming selfish or uncaring. It's about learning to care for yourself with the same dedication you've shown to others. It's about recognizing that your needs matter, that your emotions are valid, and that you can maintain loving relationships while also maintaining healthy boundaries. This process often involves grieving the childhood you didn't have, the authentic self you had to suppress, and the energy you've spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it can be to constantly monitor other people's reactions to your words and actions? Do you find yourself changing your behavior based on what you think others want to see? These questions aren't meant to make you feel bad about yourself. They're invitations to notice patterns that might be operating below your conscious awareness. If you're recognizing yourself in this description, know that you're not alone and that your people-pleasing tendencies developed for very good reasons. I want to take a moment to thank you for clicking on this video and for being here with me today. You're watching Not What It Seems, where we explore the deeper truths behind human behavior and emotional patterns. Every day we dive into topics that help us understand ourselves and others with greater compassion and clarity. If you're finding value in this exploration, I invite you to stay with us as we continue unpacking the complexity of people-pleasing behavior. The journey from people-pleasing to authentic self-expression isn't linear. It involves learning to tolerate the discomfort that arises when we stop automatically accommodating others. For someone whose nervous system has been trained to interpret conflict as danger, setting a boundary or saying no can feel terrifying. Their body might respond with panic, guilt, or overwhelming anxiety, even when they know intellectually that they're making a healthy choice.
This is where self-compassion becomes crucial. Instead of judging yourself for feeling scared when you try to assert your needs, you can recognize that fear as evidence of how hard you've worked to keep yourself safe. Your people-pleasing tendencies aren't a character flaw, they're a testament to your resilience and your deep capacity for love. The same sensitivity that made you vulnerable to developing people-pleasing patterns is also what makes you capable of deep connection and genuine care for others. Learning to set boundaries often feels like learning a foreign language for people-pleasers. They might know the words, but struggle to say them without feeling guilty or anxious. This is because boundaries weren't modeled for them in childhood, or because they learned that having needs was somehow selfish or wrong. The process of boundary setting involves not just learning new skills, but also healing the underlying wounds that made boundaries feel dangerous in the first place. The relationship between people-pleasing and perfectionism is also worth exploring. Many people-pleasers are also perfectionists, driven by the belief that if they can just do everything perfectly, they'll finally earn the love and acceptance they crave. But perfectionism is another form of self-abandonment, another way of prioritizing external validation over internal well-being. Both patterns stem from the same root, the belief that we must earn our place in the world rather than simply belonging because we exist. What does it look like to begin healing from people-pleasing? It starts with small acts of self-honesty. Notice when you're saying yes, but feeling no. Pay attention to the sensations in your body when you're asked to do something you don't want to do. Begin to recognize the difference between genuine generosity and compulsive accommodation. These moments of awareness are like turning on a light in a room that's been dark for years. Suddenly you can see what's actually there. Healing also involves learning to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to fix it or make it go away. People-pleasers often rush to smooth over any tension or conflict, but learning to tolerate the temporary discomfort of someone else's disappointment or disapproval is essential for developing authentic relationships. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice staying present with difficult emotions, the stronger your capacity becomes.
The process of recovery often involves what we might call good enough parenting yourself. This means learning to provide for yourself the unconditional love and acceptance that you needed as a child but didn't receive. It means speaking to yourself with kindness when you make mistakes, celebrating your efforts even when the results aren't perfect, and treating your own needs as worthy of attention and care. As you begin to heal your people-pleasing patterns, you might notice that some relationships in your life become strained. This can be painful, but it's often necessary. People who were accustomed to your automatic accommodation might resist your new boundaries. Some relationships that were built on your willingness to give without receiving might not survive your journey toward authenticity. This is a natural part of the healing process, though it can feel like loss and grief. But here's what's remarkable about this journey. As you learn to show up authentically in the world, you also create space for others to do the same. Your willingness to be real, to have needs, to express emotions honestly, gives others permission to drop their own masks and pretenses. The relationships that survive your transformation often become deeper, more genuine, and more satisfying than anything you experienced while people-pleasing. The path from people-pleasing to authentic self-expression is really a path from fear to love. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of conflict. These fears kept you small and accommodating. But love, genuine self-love, and the love that flows from authentic connection is what allows you to step into your full humanity. It's what enables you to care for others without sacrificing yourself, to be generous without being compulsive, to maintain relationships without losing yourself in the process. One of the most profound shifts in recovery happens when you realize that your worth isn't determined by how much you give or how happy you make others. Your value as a human being is inherent, not earned. You don't have to prove your worthiness through service or sacrifice. You belong here simply because you exist. And that belonging can't be taken away by someone else's opinion or reaction.
This understanding transforms everything. Instead of approaching relationships from a place of scarcity, trying to earn love through performance, you can approach them from a place of abundance, knowing that you have value to offer simply by being yourself. Instead of giving from emptiness, hoping to fill the void through others' approval, you can give from fullness, sharing your authentic gifts without attachment to the outcome. The journey of healing people-pleasing patterns is really a journey home to yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you abandoned in order to keep others happy. It's about integrating your shadow, all the emotions, needs, and desires that you learned were unacceptable,
It's about discovering that you can be both loving and boundaried, both generous and self-caring, both connected to others and true to yourself. As we come to the end of our exploration today, I want you to know that if you're struggling with people-pleasing patterns, you're not broken and you're not alone. These patterns developed for very good reasons, and they can be healed with patience, compassion, and the right support. The same heart that made you vulnerable to people-pleasing is also what makes you capable of profound love and authentic connection. Thank you for spending this time with me today, exploring these deep waters of human behavior and healing. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to give this video a like. It helps others find this content when they need it most. If you feel moved to share your own experiences with people-pleasing or have insights to add to this conversation, please leave a comment below. Your voice matters, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you're interested in continuing this journey of understanding yourself and others more deeply, consider subscribing to Not What It Seems, where we explore these profound truths about human nature every single day.